Welcome back to another episode where we're actually going to do something technical today. I'm gonna call this one Meringue 101. Yes, sugar and egg whites fluff up to something extremely magical. That's what meringue is to me. We'll make the Italian, the Swiss, and the French one, and I will actually transform them into some beautiful dessert. We're also gonna use some tea and some plankton into your food. Yes, you've heard it right. So let's do it.
Alright, so let's start with the Swiss meringue. We're gonna need some egg white, obviously some sugar, a double boiler, you're gonna need a piping bag, a thermometer, and make sure you have a mixer. Alright, so we're gonna start by putting our eggs and our sugar together into a bowl, and we're gonna place that on top of the double boiler. Honestly, this one is a little more, I would say, requiring some elbow grease because we're gonna have to whisk that for quite a while. Basically, we want it to reach to about 108 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're gonna want to flip that up until you reach the desired temperature. Once you've done that, you're gonna grab your bowl out of the heat and you're gonna place it back onto a mixer, and you're going to whisk it until it's actually completely cooled down. It's going to thicken, it's going to fluff up a little bit. Obviously, make sure you try it because we want to make sure the product is optimal as always. That part of the process is going to take about 4 to 5 minutes. When you're happy and it's nice and cool, we're gonna add our flavoring. In this case, I'm gonna use just simply some vanilla, and I'm gonna add a bit of coloring extract. It's better if you use the gel because it's not going to add like liquid into a thicker paste, right? So we're gonna let it go for about another minute or until the color and the vanilla is fully combined. At this point, you're gonna stop the mixer and you need to check the consistency. That meringue is extremely dense and it's not as fluffy as the Italian, as we will see in a little bit. So we're going to take all that meringue, obviously we're gonna give it a try. Delicious. All right, now that we're happy with the taste of the meringue, we are going to place it into a piping bag. In this case, I'm using a star tip, but you could use any tip, or you don't have to use a tip because basically this meringue is more so for decoration to put on top of cake. We're going to bake it, make sure it's dry. So honestly, the design is really up to you. And as you can see, I'm just going to have some fun and I'm gonna do many different design from a star to a little zigzag. Just get kind of like creative, right? You don't have any limit when it comes to making those meringue. It could be on top of the cake, it could be on top of a dessert as a garnish. This is what that meringue will be used for. When you're happy with all your little design, we are going to place them into the oven. I'm also going to show you the second thing that we do a lot at a restaurant, where we create a sheet of meringue that we're gonna break off into shards, and it's perfect for like contemporary looking dessert and to bring a bit of a modern aspect. All right, so now we're done with that. As I mentioned, we're going to place in the oven. I have my oven set at 215 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm gonna let them kind of like bake. I don't like that term baking, it's more drying, for about an hour and a half. So while the meringue is cooking, drying, I'm gonna work on a French meringue, and we're gonna need some sugar, some icing sugar, and obviously some egg whites and our mixer. This one is much simpler. We are going to add our eggs into our mixer with the whisk attachment, and we're gonna place a third of the caster sugar, all right? Remember, we have 2 types of sugar, into our bowl, and we're gonna start mixing. You could also add a little bit of salt, like a pinch of salt. It always help with the egg white. Also, a little trick with meringue, always make sure your eggs are room temperature. It will help. Anyway, we're going to fluff it up until we get some soft peaks. When we have a soft peaks, we're gonna add the rest of the caster sugar until the meringue is completely absorbing all that sugar, right? It's going to be shiny and hard and fluffy. Then we're gonna lower the speed and we're gonna start to add a bit of the icing sugar. And in this case, I'm going to add my flavoring for the meringue. I'm going to use them to make some pavlova. And we're gonna go with something a little bit different, very modern approach of a dessert. So I'm gonna use plankton. It is a vegetal plankton, so you could actually use it into vegetarian cooking. So we're not gonna put too much because obviously plankton has a pretty strong flavor. Once it's all mixed in, I'm going to add the rest of the icing sugar. Obviously, be careful, don't add too much at a time. We don't want to crush or egg whites. Also, make sure you don't have your mixer on full speed because, well, it will look like you have egg whites and sugar everywhere. Once we're happy with the consistency, always check over the head. It's not falling. We're happy. This one is, you can see it's a little bit softer. It's not as dense as the Swiss one. I'm going to take 2 spoons. You could do it with 2 spoons, or you could use like a larger spoon. That works in both cases. And you want to create like a form, you know, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. You just want to put like a good lump onto your baking sheet with a seal pad. And then once you're happy with those little forms, we're gonna just use a spoon to create a bit of a shape. Honestly, again, it's just my technique. Just use some hot water and spoon it. So we create a hole, which is where I'm going to add my garnish later on. Before we place them in the oven, I'm going to add my plankton a bit more just to kind of intensify that beautiful flavor of the ocean. Now that I'm happy with everything, I'm going to place them in my 215 degrees oven, same as the Swiss meringue, and just like them, we're gonna cook that for an hour and a half. Okay, so last but not least, the Italian. We're gonna need, again, some egg whites, some sugar, and water. I'm gonna use some tea in this case, and also I have my mixer, a pot, my thermometer for the cooking, and I'm also gonna use some cream of tartar. So I'm going to place my sugar into a small saucepan with my water, and we're gonna place that on the heat because we are going to cook that sugar to 110 degrees or 228 degrees Fahrenheit. Meanwhile, we're going to place our egg whites into our mixer with the cream of tartar and again a little pinch of salt. That's kind of like my go-to every time I want to do a meringue. We're gonna obviously close the mixer, and then we're going to start whisking, going from slow to high speed until we have some soft peak. Obviously, we're gonna check on our sugar. We're happy with the temperature. We reached 228 degrees, so I'm gonna put it into my soft peaks, and we're gonna pour the sugar very slowly. We don't want to obviously overdo it, and the sugar, want to make sure it's mixed. So really slowly, like pour, like you see, like it's a little like a drizzle, like you would emulsify with some olive oil. At this point, when I'm happy, I got all the sugar in, it's emulsified, I'm going to add some tea. I'm gonna put them on a delicious passion fruit tart. So I'm using the tea from my friend Trevelou that has that flavor profile. Again, this one is very different, right? You can see it's a lot lighter. We're still holding over our head, but it's gonna be the softest of meringue, something that we use to top our meringue pie or passion fruit pie or into dessert like that. So I'm going to place all of my meringue into my piping bag, but I'm not gonna put a tip in this case because I just want to put a dollop on top of my little passion fruit tartlets, which I'm going to do so. And you can see, right, it doesn't hold its shape like the other one would. So that's something to remember. You need to adapt the meringue based on what you want to do. You could also bake this meringue, but I don't think it's the right application. Then I'm gonna do my little touch. I'm gonna get my blowtorch and brulee my pie so they have the golden brown and white hat outfit. I mean, they just look so sexy. I am very happy. So I took a little break while my meringue were drying, and we're going to have a look at them. So if you remember, this is our Swiss meringue, which I mentioned is more for decoration or to add like a nice texture into a dessert. I'm happy with them. You can see they're really crispy, and you know the best part of the meringue is when it melts in your mouth. And let me tell you, this one did not disappoint. Let's look at our second one, which is the French one. So we're happy with the pavlova. You have that crispy outside, but the inside is still a little bit chewy, right? So that's kind of like what we look for into that particular meringue. For the pavlova, I'm going to pair it with some strawberry preserve and some pickled strawberry with a bit of basil, and I've also added the plankton into my preserve. I'm going to place it on top of the pavlova, and that makes for a pretty creative and modern dessert and a take on the classic. Alright, so we're about to be ready to taste, so I hope you remember all of our version of today because now it's going to be your time to get cooking.
So today we went over the classic meringue. We started with the Swiss meringue that is way denser, that we cooked over a bain-marie. This is perfect for garnishes on top of cakes and whatnot, like something very crunchy and crispy that's going to melt in your mouth. Then we did the French meringue. That is actually raw, the simplest one probably, and this one is perfect for vacherin or pavlova, like the one we did today. Finally, we finished with the Swiss one, which is with the cooked sugar, and this is it's much lighter, very luscious, very shiny, and this is perfect for topping cakes, and then I like to brûler it so you have that beautiful white and golden brown. So if you enjoyed this recipe, a little bit more technical, please let me know. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you like and what you don't like. Today's recipe, as always, will be in the description below. One could argue is the fourth type of meringue, which is the vegan meringue made with aquafaba. I've done it before in a couple episodes back if you want to catch it right here. And I think it's time for us to try it, and I will catch you soon.